a grid.
We all have one. Mine's doing. Oh, mine's bent forward.
Black Power, GG. What's going on, comrade? How are ya? Is it warm in Orlando? What's the weather like in Orlando? You think it's warm?
Probably.
Let's check. Now, if that's one thing I miss about Florida, is the weather. Yeah. For real. It's 77 in Orlando. It's 79 in Orlando right now.
Well, because we don't know what we're going to get up here. One day it's 70 something.
That is crazy.
The next day is 40s.
Tomorrow is going to be 82 there. Tuesday 85. Wednesday 85. 78, 62, 69, 71. That is so unfair. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand.
You better not move your ass back to Florida.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not. Black Power, everybody. What's up? Come on. Y'all know what today is. It's a Sunday. It's a Black Power Sunday with the Revolutionary Book Trap. Please, once you come into the room, Black Power Tayana, make sure you share. Hold on a second.
What y'all doing today? What y'all eating good?
I know I'm hungry now. Like,
I thought you was going to cook this morning.
I wanted to thank you for sharing, Comrade GG. Tayana said, "Dang, smile."
Oh, she got to be talking to me.
Let me share this live real quick. But y'all make sure y'all share, put hashtag shared in the video. I mean in the comments once you shared it. So we can get you can get this political education out there to everybody. Shout out to our new comrades in Nigeria. Whoop whoop. I'm ready so y'all can teach me how to I think it's called Skele Woo, I think.
It is.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we're really excited to have our Nigerian comrades on this live stream if they're able to join us. We're about to see things we've never seen before.
Yes.
So.
And it's gonna
really
be
exciting.
litty.
Yeah, they're not gonna know what the fuck to do.
Okay, I think I've shared it to like all the groups. Black Power Cameron. So you can just hold that to read the comments. All right, comrades, trappers, good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Revolutionary Book Trap with your boy, the joy bringer, the money maker, the man taker. Like, I ain't taking nobody, man. Chiefs Dia.
All of that, and then Chiefs Nyah.
Black Power Jameer. So welcome y'all. Yes. Oh my goodness. It's another episode of the Revolutionary Book Trap. And as y'all know, up until this point, we have been reading How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by our ancestor, Walter Rodney. And we have made it to the last chapter.
Oh my God.
So I mean, yeah, we made it to the last chapter, but as y'all know, we only cover in the first half of the chapter. Black Power Olofin, and then next week, y'all, we're gonna be wrapping it up. And this book, this read has been very, like,
extensive.
Very extensive.
It's been a lot of just information that you're not gonna get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it's profound in a lot of ways. It's very it's very important information. Just very important that it's requires like deep analysis to it, to break down what it all means and how it's relevant to today and what we're seeing in the way that Africans all over the planet have to live their lives, are forced to live their lives, and what our relationship is to this horrible parasitic capitalist imperialist system, and really just it sets the foundation down as to what we need to be thinking about so that we can really get free.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been a really important read.
And you can understand how this, because this book was written in 1969?
Yeah, 72 something. 72? It was copywritten in 1972, but I think it was definitely written in the 60s.
And when you read about the history of this book and just the commentary on it and how transformative it was for the revolutionaries, fighting the Revolutionary War in the 1960s, like you can see how transformative it was, and to see how it was able to, shape the struggle then and now, because like we've been discussing throughout this whole process, like this book pretty much is one of the most solid recollections of how all of this, how white imperialism and colonialism came to be, came into existence, and just how it started on the continent of Africa, like what these colonizers, these Europeans did in order to make capitalism a world global system. And just like it was so deep and profound back then when it first came out, it's the same here, because we understand that imperialism has made it its mission to cover, bury, completely disregard, reinterpret, change around like the history of how all the things that we know to be America and imperialism, like just change that whole basis, so we don't even have, like, it's pretty much like a brainwashing, to be honest. And just like this has been like, I can see how it's been so profound up until this point, and it's been just it's been an extensive read. Now, like, we can't sit here in front and say like it was easy, because this was not an easy read. And Walter Rodney was definitely detail laden, but we appreciate it. We appreciate that.
Yeah, this is I'll say this has been the most difficult read we've done.
So up to this point.
Yeah.
So y'all keep so yeah, we're gonna do the first half this week, well today, and then next week we're going to do we're going to finish the book, and then we'll be moving on to another book. But Black Power comrades, Black Power Chief Robert, Black Power Chief Muhammadu, thank y'all for sharing so much. And so yeah, now back to the other business, the other portion of business that we have. And like, if you guys have been if you tuned in last week, we announced that the Atlanta unit is getting ready to put on our next event. Thank you. Thank you for sharing again, Robert. And that is the open mic series, Lyrics and Ladles, that is going down April 11th, Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Black Dot Culture Center. And we are so happy to announce that we have been able to reserve the space. We have been able to reserve the venue for the event. And that is because
power to the people.
Power to the people. Yep. Power to the people. So we just really, really want to deeply and profoundly thank you all for all of your donations that came in last week. Right now, we have an overall goal of raising $700 to make sure that this event is the most beautiful, like professional, like deep and profound event. And just like we discussed last week, what we want to do with Lyrics and Ladles is make it this bi-monthly event First, to invite, local artists within the community here in Atlanta, just because we know what a cultural hub Atlanta is. Yes. You can find any aspect of culture here, in the city of Atlanta. And we want to be able to showcase that. Mm-hmm. And just like, the Political Education and Culture Command created the Revolutionary Lit Social Institution, this is another social institution where we will put forward and, provide a platform to our brothers and sisters here in the community, who just want to express themselves artistically, whether it be through rap, singing, poetry, dance, playing an instrument, to, let them express themselves without, again, the confines of capitalism. Because, capitalism has been able to, influence everything that we consume, especially our music. Especially our music. And if you aren't making music that isn't talking about, participating in the illegal drug economy, disrespecting African women, indigenous women, disrespecting, gender.
Being greedy.
Yeah.
It doesn't sell.
Yeah, it does not sell. And, that is what these record execs, these managers, all of these different types of individuals who have their hand in what is supposed to be an artist's artistic, value. You then put stipulations on how I'm able to express myself. Mm-hmm. And you are able to dictate in turn what is able to be sold, like, for example, on the music market or in the literature market, and like all of these different avenues of that capitalism is able to exploit us. And so that's what Lyrics and Ladles wants to do, offer this platform so we can just come back, kick our shit, listen to music, fellowship, be surrounded by by black people, indigenous people, something that is our own. So we want to make this a bi-monthly thing. And then on top of that, all of the resources that is raised from the door to people who donate the food, once they come to, because see how we do it is you can donate on a sliding scale. From at the event, you can donate from $5 to $10, or you can donate a food item that we will use to cook for the homeless food drive.
Yep.
And while we're talking about the homeless food drive, once we have the Lyrics and Ladles event on the 11th, that following Saturday, which is going to be the 15th, we're going to be doing another food drive. We're going to be doing a food drive. So everything, like all the resources that we make that night, all of the food items that donated that night, that next weekend, we're turning it over right back into the homeless food drive. Mm-hmm. And so this is how we want, this is how we want it to work. So every 2 months, we have Lyrics and Ladles. Then that following weekend, boom, food drive. Mm-hmm. And this is how we want to establish our presence here within the city of Atlanta. And we right now we start with Lyrics and Ladles, but that is going to transform into so many different cultural things. Going into yoga, like health classes, dance classes, spiritual classes, getting in touch with African and indigenous spiritual systems and things of that nature. So please support Lyrics and Ladles. So today, what we want to do, since we've been able to secure the venue, what we want to do now is cover the food budget for the event. Because if we having an event, we gotta have food, and
you can't have no food with no indigenous African people.
Because colonized people like to eat. We love to eat. Okay, so we want to do something light, right? We probably want to do some chicken wings and things of that nature. So today we have a goal of raising $100 to go towards the food for the event. And y'all already know how. Well, first, let me offer a self-criticism. And I really want to, shout out to Comrade Ghazi for really pushing us to make this happen. But, okay, so we've created our own. Atlanta now has its own Cash App. We have our own Cash App now. Mm-hmm. And, just so that we have organizational integrity and that we make sure that the resources are going to where they need to be delegated to. And so, I'm self-critical. As the unit leader for the Atlanta chapter, I should have made sure that shit was already handled and taken care of. But we have solved the problem, okay? We have solved the problem. So our Cash App tag is Black Hammer Atlanta. So that's BLACK Hammer HAMMERATL. And it's pinned right here in the comment sections. So now you don't have to worry about, there's no questions about where your resources are going. You can send it straight to our Cash App that is delegated right for the Atlanta unit. So we have our goal of raising $100 this morning. You can donate, right now, $5, $10, or whatever you can spare, or you can make a pledge. And by that, we need you to just put in the comment section how much you are willing to donate and the date that you can send it in. And then we here in the Atlanta unit will contact you, follow up with you, just to make sure that we get that. And yeah, so y'all already know where it's going to, and all of that good stuff. So you excited about what we got?
I'm excited. Especially like we're doing that, and then we're gonna be doing the food drive again, and we're feeding the community, which is that's my heart. So I'm excited, and then just the cultural piece of it. I can't wait to see the talent that we're going to be able to be exposed to and just be surrounded by. And you know what it's like to be around a bunch of African and indigenous people that just. One thing that we have never lost in this assault against us as human beings on this planet is our culture.
Right.
They've tried.
Often imitated, tried to duplicate it, but
Becky's up here wearing head wraps and ankhs and shit like that. But we know that all comes from us.
Black Power. Looks like we already got our first pledge of this morning.
All right, that's from Gigi.
Black Power,
Gigi. She said this upcoming Friday.
Right on.
Girl, I feel you. Payday. We gotta wait till that payday. So.
Yes.
Black Power, comrade.
Now all we gotta raise is $90 more. So again, donate right now if you can, or make a pledge, and yeah. And what else I was getting ready to say? Slipped my mind. But shout out to the comrades in California. Shout out to Comrade Tariva, who's the unit leader there. They had their defense class yesterday. And like they had pepper spray. Like they taught y'all how to do. Look, tune into our Tuesday public meeting because I'm sure Comrade Tariva has a report on that. And so, this is what we're doing in the community, y'all.
We active all over the place. We acting up. Up.
All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started. We're jumping into Chapter 6 of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, again by our ancestor Walter Rodney. And I want to say that this brother was assassinated for this book that he wrote. And you would think but it's just a book. It's just literature. Why would they feel the need to murder this African man over a book that he wrote? And it's not because it's what's in the book. It's the information that's what's in the book. Because we understand that once African and indigenous people are exposed to this type of literature, then we come to understand who the enemy is. We come to understand how we have to overturn this system so we can have our self-determination back.
It really weaponizes you.
Yes, it weaponizes you against the oppressor. So, all right, Chapter 6, Colonialism as a System for Underdeveloping Africa. So I want to read these two quotes that Comrade Walter starts the chapter off with, and they are just very profound. And the first one reads, "The black man certainly has to pay dear for carrying the white man's burden." George Padmore, West Indian Pan-Africanist, 1936. You want to read that second one, Comrade?
I sure will. In the colonial society, education is such that it serves the colonialists. In a regime of slavery, education was but one institution for forming slaves. Oh my God, I could talk all day about that. And that was a statement from Frelimo, Mozambique Liberation Front, Department of Education and Culture, 1960.
Wait, somebody's asking, can I support the movement? Who's that? Is that Jameer? Jameer is somebody that I went to school with, y'all. He's from, Jameer, you're from Philly, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, but we went to school together. Oh, Black Power.
Black Power, Alex.
So, Black Power. Alex just donated $20.
So $70 more to go.
$70 more.
Black Power, Alex. You are just so bad.
Black Power.
So Jameer.
Yeah, he is from Philly. Okay, my boo thing from Philly too. I don't know what it is about. Like, it's a lot of people from Philly in Atlanta.
If Jameer wants to join, isn't the link pinned?
Hold on, say it one time.
If he said, "Can I support the movement?" Are you asking to join? Jameer?
Yeah, of course you can.
So you can. There's a link pinned, and you can join the movement. Of course, Jameer. Of course, you can join.
So yeah, you can donate for the event. We definitely would love to have you as a member. So
of course,
like you can look into all of that good stuff. So what else was I getting ready to say? I can't remember. Okay.
But we was reading the quote.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
So, but we just read the one about the education.
But like, yeah, and to be honest, like, okay, so we know that there's a superstructure to this whole thing, you know, especially here in America. And education, the educational system is definitely a portion of the superstructure. And the superstructure is a conglomerate of different entities that is able to pretty much reinforce and back up the system of imperialism. And some of those things, you have the judicial system, which is like the courts and all of that stuff. You have like the healthcare system. You have religion. You have education. And all of these things go into reinforcing, you know, what imperialism is. So this is how we, you know, even us as people, you know, as colonized people who have had to go on, who have had to go through the educational system, where first we're taught that our history begins as slavery, that, you know, we're only taught about certain individuals during Black History Month, and you know, all of these different things like that. We're taught to have patriotism for this country. We are taught in elementary school every morning to put our hands over our heart and recite the motherfucking Pledge of Allegiance. And
an imperialist ass flag.
All of this is what goes to reinforce, you know, this colonial indoctrination of, you know, as colonized people. Like, this is the superstructure that forces these things upon us. And as it says, like, in a regime of slavery, education was but one institution for forming slaves. And just so we motherfucking clear, we don't have to be on no plantations. We don't have to have no shackles on our hands. We don't even have to be picking cotton. But you best believe that slavery is still here, and it has just changed its face. It has just changed its face. And just because you're able to, you know, travel, you have access to even just the bare minimum of resources that you have to go, you have to continue to sell your labor power so you can eat and, you know, just have the bare necessities that you have to get by, just the bare minimum. That's just been able to make your slavery, your slavery to this system comfortable. And just like Walter Rodney said in this motherfucking book, the capitalists had to give some forms of concessions to the slave to make sure that the slave would not rise up, that the slave will continue to work in the system just to survive. And that's where we're at right now. We don't have to have an overseer cracking a whip, because you know who the overseer is now? The motherfucking pigs in your community. And they don't have a whip, but they have a motherfucking gun. They don't have a horse, but they have a motherfucking patrol car. So it's just changed its face. It's just changed its face. And this colonial education system is what indoctrinates us to have some type of appreciation for that. Mm-hmm. At least you not in, back in Africa worshiping some tree like, oh, thank God for the white man. Listen.
Well, and I wanted to say two things. You made a point about Black History Month, and especially like as we're exposed to it in America. Mm-hmm. And somebody that I highly revere that I follow, she's made a point to say that I know in America or in the U.S., we are really quick to exclude or preserve this month. Not only are we reserving it for 1 month out of the year, mm-hmm. but also, we exclude, Africans all over the diaspora, mm-hmm. And we want to reserve it for mm-hmm. really, just people that will have done anything significant mm-hmm. for the building of America. Mm-hmm. People would revere Barack Obama, mm-hmm. Or somebody like that. But when it comes to revering anybody outside of the U.S. colonial borders, mm-hmm. it's well, that's not relevant because we're talking about Black Americans. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why we are Black Americans is because we were put here, we were forced here against our will. And mm-hmm. that's something that we need to remember is that Black is synonymous with African. Mm-hmm. We are Africans. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to make a point to say is that I read something from Amos Wilson, and he made a point to say that a lot of people think that education forms culture, mm-hmm. but it's really the other way around. It's culture that really forms the education. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, the only education that our children can get from the colonial school system is just that. Mm-hmm. They're going to go through life, grow up thinking that, yes, my history began with slavery. Yes, my history is this. Africans didn't contribute anything. Look at Africa now. Mm-hmm. Why would I want to be associated with that? Mm-hmm. Thinking that there was some flaw in being African. You see it in everything that we want to identify with. Mm-hmm. We want to identify with everything but being African. Mm-hmm. And it's tragic, and it's something I just really want to overturn, which is why, it's not that all hope is lost, because just like you and I received a colonial education, and mm-hmm. here we are, mm-hmm. But it's just so I can't stress the importance of, us being intertwined with our children's education and basically coming back and undoing it. You may not think you're getting anywhere with it, but they're listening, mm-hmm. and you are their biggest influence. Mm-hmm. You are the first voice that they hear and that they listen to. And my son, he just did a project, and we put some harsh facts about Barack Obama on that Black History poster. So I think he passed.
Okay.
But he wasn't going to school revering no neo-colonial sellout.
Oh my gosh.
And that's just one example of the many things that we have to do to help shape mm-hmm. our children's education.
Mm-hmm. Girl, when Ari walk into that classroom with that goddamn project, those teachers are going to gag. They're going to gag.
Yeah, what is this? I just...
Oh my goodness. Comrade, I appreciate your stance so much. So much. And as a colonized mother, for you to take that stance, it's just it's astronomical. And we are, look, okay, girl, we ain't even started talking about the book yet.
Chapter.
But okay, y'all. Okay, we only got $70 more to raise to reach our goal of $100. So please make sure you go to the Black Hammer Cash App, and that's Black Hammer ATL. Black Hammer is all spelled out, ATL at the end. We got any comments we can read real quick?
Let's see. America by Colonialism is what Cameron said. Mm-hmm. Jameer said, of course I am, responding to whether he was interested in joining. And he said, of course I am. The monthly donations goes towards our mass organizations, our website, Uber, conference, Zoom to stream our meetings. Gigi just laying it all out where the money goes. Okay. So I appreciate that.
Right on.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Black power, y'all. So $70 more. We gotta feed the people at the event, y'all. We don't want people to come to this event and they be hungry and they start throwing shit. Cause you know our people don't hesitate.
I know how I get when I get hungry.
Right. So that's Black Camera ATL through the Cash App. Okay, so we start the chapter with the subhead, and it says the supposed benefits of colonialism to Africa, and this is absolutely fucking hilarious. And Comrade Walter Rodney starts the chapter off. I want to read this statement because it starts the basis for the whole chapter, like what we're going to, be getting into. So he says, faced with the evidence of European exploitation of Africa, many bourgeois writers would concede, at least partially, that colonialism was a system which functioned well in the interest of the metropoles, meaning, these imperialist countries and things of that nature. However, they would then urge that another issue to be resolved is how much Europeans did for Africans, and that it is necessary to draw up a balance sheet of colonialism. On that balance sheet, they place both the credits and the debits, and quite often conclude that the good outweighed the bad.
I mean, if I was a professional liar, I guess I would use that too.
And I mean, like, this all goes into how imperialism can whitewash history. How they can whitewash history. He continues to say that particular conclusion can quite easily be challenged, but attention should also be drawn to the fact that the process of reasoning itself is misleading. And that is to say that this is what the understanding that these imperialists know what they have done, what has happened. So for them to even try to make this, for them to make some type of conclusion that colonialism had any type of benefits to Africa during this process is already misleading. For you to even say that from the jump is already misleading. And he says, the reasoning has some sentimental persuasiveness. It appeals to the common sentiment that after all there must be two skies to a thing. The argument suggests that on the one hand there was exploitation and oppression, but on the other hand colonial governments did much for the benefit of Africans and they developed Africa. It is our contention that this is completely false. Colonialism had only one hand. It was a one-hand motherfucking bandit.
I mean,
and you better believe that.
Yeah, because when you leaving their grounds like so depleted, holes in the ground, the people can't even work in those conditions and things. How are you developing it? You're literally extracting every bit of resources in the ground, expatriating it to other continents on the planet, profiting off of it and giving the people that they can't even repair their land after the damage has been done.
And then they want to say that, well, they built railroads, they built schools, they built hospitals and the like. But I mean, like, there's no way. And even like we're gonna get deeper into that. But let's just give an example, because like all of these different imperialist countries that were in Africa at this point that was doing, colonizing, stealing these resources and everything like that, had the nerve, had the motherfucking gall to even boast and profess what they were doing for Africans at this time. But I mean, like, dialectical materialism, like being a materialist, like, motherfucker, your words don't mean shit, because how has Africa come to be in this present state that it's in right now?
Well, they want us to believe that it's our own downfall. Them coming to us was their God complex and saving us and pulling us out of our depravity and our primitive behavior, our savagery and shit like that. But it was really their greed that caused this. And
listen to this. And we understand, like, the Portuguese was like, they were the first to start stealing Africans from Africa. And so this is what they had to say. The Portuguese stand out because they boasted the most and did the least. Portugal boasted that Angola, Guinea, and Mozambique have been their possessions for 500 years, during which time a civilizing mission has been going on. At the end of 500 years of shouldering the white man's burden of civilizing African natives, the Portuguese had not managed to train a single African doctor in Mozambique, and the life expectancy in eastern Angola was less than 30 years. As for Guinea-Bissau, some insight into the situation there is provided by the admission of the Portuguese themselves that Guinea-Bissau was more neglected than Angola and Mozambique. And then, another indication to just like how motherfucking filthy and nasty these Europeans was, these colonizers was. Like, listen, people, like, they have set up this ideology, like we just said, that they came to Africa to civilize us, to make sure that we were civilized. Listen to this. They were all more determined to have luxuries in Africa because so many of them came from poverty in Europe and could not expect good services in their own homelands. So how does, like...
Then we get into the infant mortality rate, and how many differences there were in that. In Algeria, the figure for infant mortality was 39 per 1,000 live births among white settlers. Okay, but it jumped to 170 per 1,000 live births in the case of Algerians living in the town. So those are indigenous Algerians. In practical terms, that meant the medical, maternity, and sanitation services were all geared towards the well-being of the settlers. So, all of these hospitals supposedly that they built and everything,
even we get into that as well too. Black Power Most Dope. This book is called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, written by Walter Rodney, and just like how you was laying out, and see this, but this is the thing, because these bourgeois motherfucking thinkers, like the intelligentsia that is able to influence, like the information, the history that we listen. These intellectuals, they are specifically employed to write these opinion pieces, to write up this so-called history. And this is what we as colonized people have to consume. This is what we're fed. Not the true history like in this book, but the opinions of the white ruling class that has the nerve to say that yes, there was oppression and colonialism in Africa, but look what we did for Africans. We built railroads, we brought civilization, we built hospitals, and all of this motherfucking type of shit like that. But what is this history that we're learning? What is this history that we're discussing right now? And just like how you was discussing the infant immortality rate, listen to this. In predominantly black countries, it was also true that the bulk of social services went to whites. The southern part of Nigeria was one of the colonial areas that was supposed to have received the most from a benevolent mother country. Ibadan, one of the most heavily populated cities in Africa, had about only 50 Europeans before the last war. For those chosen few, the British colonial government maintained a segregated hospital service of 11 beds. For these 50 Europeans that was in this country at this time. 11 beds in well-furnished surroundings. Oh, there were 34 beds for 500,000 blacks.
That's 500,000 people. We're supposed to be able to be accommodated by 34 beds in a hospital. And if they couldn't pay, they didn't get service. Period.
The situation was repeated in other areas, so that altogether 4,000 Europeans in the country in the 1930s had 12 modern hospitals, while the African population, of at least 40 million had 52 motherfucking hospitals. 52 hospitals for 40 million Africans. 40 million Africans. And this is the so-called benefits that Africa has reaped from the presence of colonialism and Europeans being in motherfucking Africa. This is the benefits that we are supposed to believe that we have reaped from this relationship.
Yeah, supposedly. Just so y'all know, we going to take a small intermission to remind y'all we are raising money for our next event. We got $70 more to raise for this live stream. So, you know, if you got $5 on it, if you got $10 on it, there's no amount that's too small. You can send your donations to $BlackHammerATL.
And this is for our Lyrics and Ladles open mic series. Mm-hmm. So if you in Atlanta, if you rap, if you sing, if you dance, if you play an instrument, hit us up so we can put you onto the program. Shout out to Comrade Angelica, who has been beating the pavement, getting these performers, getting these artists to confirm and participate. And like my comrade just said, yes, we have $70 more to raise, and we're raising these resources so we can cover the food for the event, because we know African and indigenous people, colonized people, we love to eat, especially while we enjoying some entertainment. Okay, yeah. So please, you can donate through our Cash App, and that's the $BlackHammerATL, and it's pinned right here in the comments. And like my comrade just said, donate whatever you can. We will take whatever you're able to give us. And even if you can't donate today, make a pledge in the comments. Just make sure, just write what you plan on pledging and the date that you can, I know, right, Teresa? And just make the date, put the date by the comment that you can make the donation. Marcy, Black Power, Marcy. Black Power, Marcy. Yeah, so just pledge how much you can donate. And then somebody within the Atlanta unit will follow up with you just to make sure that we receive your donation. You can also, whatchamacallit? Oh my gosh. You can also share the donation link. Share the Cash App link with your friends and families. Who you know support the movement, who will support, something like what we're trying to do. And and thank you, Comrade Robert, for making that comment, because I forgot. But we right now, what the Revolutionary Book Trap is trying to do, we're trying to do this hashtag Trappers Selfie Movement. And trappers is what we call, people who support me and Chief Nyah here on the Revolutionary Book Trap, because we know we have people tuning in to this book club from all over. So what we want to do is have you guys take selfies with a sign just saying hashtag I am a trapper, then put the Revolutionary Book Trap, and then the city and state that you're in. And then what we're trying to do is put together this wonderful collage just to show, all of the beautiful people, all of the beautiful colonized African people that are supporting this show. And so we can build camaraderie and make connections with, everybody that is tuning in for the Revolutionary Book Trap. So you can send your pictures, send your selfies to blackhammerorg@gmail.com. And as you can see, our agitprop team, led by Chief Robert Q. It's your boy Rob. It's your boy Rob. Like, all of the beautiful memes, the social media posts, all of that stuff comes from the agitprop team, which is led by Comrade Robert, and all of the wonderful comrades that compose this team. Like, they be working day and night, and literally our shit is fire. Like, If it's one thing you gonna talk about when you talk about motherfucking Black Hammer, you could talk about our food drives, you could talk about our self-defense classes, you could talk about our coat drives, you could talk about our cultural events, and another thing that you're gonna be talking about is that motherfucking agitprop, that agitation and propaganda, okay? So while you talking about that, make sure you mention that too, boo-boo, okay?
Because it do be agitating, don't it?
Make sure you mention that too. Okay, but let's get back on track. So again, support the Lyrics and Ladles open mic series. Donate to the Black Hammer ATL unit cash app. That's Black Hammer ATL, and let's raise this money so we can make sure our people are able to eat at this event. Black Power. So another part of this chapter that we're gonna go to because. Like, girl, we've been doing a lot of talking.
Yeah. And I think Alex had to read that back up here too. Mm-hmm. If y'all have anything that stood out to y'all, please put it in the comments. But I wanted to go back and find.
Because Comrade Alex always has a hashtag.
Okay. Well, what he said was to be colonized is to be removed from history, except in the most passive sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
The next portion that Comrade Walter speaks about, well, the next subtitle that we go into is the negative character or the social, political, and economic consequences. And this is what he's speaking about in terms of this relationship that, how colonialism in Africa was able to, build the economy for Europeans.
Right.
And he starts this portion off by saying, the argument so far has been aimed at showing the benefits from colonialism were small and that they were not gifts from the colonialists, but rather fruits of African labor and resources for the most part. Indeed, what was called the development of Africa by the colonialists was a cynical shorthand expression for the intensification of colonial exploitation in Africa to develop capitalist Europe. Mm. Go ahead, Comrade.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Finish what you were going to say.
The analysis has gone beyond that to demonstrate the numerous false claims that are made purporting to show that Europe developed Africa in the sense of bringing about social order, nationalism, and economic modernization. However, all of that would still not permit the conclusion that colonialism had a negative impact on Africa's development. And in offering the view that colonialism was negative, the aim is to draw attention to the way that previous African development was blunted, halted, and turned back. In place of that interruption and blockade, nothing of compensatory value was introduced. So, that already lays just like we stated earlier, colonialism in Africa was nothing but a one-armed bandit. Stealing, and continuing to steal today. And nothing that Africa has reaped in this relationship, nothing has benefited.
No, and then I'm not sure where it was that I read it, because this was a long piece, but it even talked about in here how, they talk about, we built roads, we built rail systems, we built all this other stuff for y'all. But one, all of that came in the form of loans. It wasn't gifted to the African continent in any form or fashion. And the other thing is, even when they built roads and things, they said that the roads didn't they weren't built in a way or constructed in a way to where it made it easy for trade to go on internally in Africa. All the roads led to the sea, to the ports.
Yes. And meaning everything was going out. Everything was going out. Nothing was coming back in. Nothing whatsoever. And so it was never anything that was built there was either to serve the white people or the white settlers that resided there, that were trying to colonize the land, or it was made to support the trade conditions so that the resources could be easily extracted from there. But it was not to benefit the indigenous people of the land. Not at all. And another point that Comrade Rodney makes, which is very important, and he says, Power is the ultimate determinant in human society, being basic to the relations within any group and between groups. It implies the ability to defend one's interest and, if necessary, to impose one's will by any means available. In relations between peoples, the question of power determines maneuverability and bargaining, the extent to which one people respect the interest of another, and eventually the extent to which a people survives as a physical and cultural entity. When one society finds itself forced to relinquish power entirely to another society, that in itself is a form of underdevelopment. It is a form of underdevelopment.
Yes.
And he also says, during the centuries of pre-colonial trade, some control over social, political, and economic life was retained in Africa in spite of the disadvantageous commerce with Europeans. That little control over internal matters disappeared under colonialism. Colonialism went much further than trade. It meant a tendency towards direct appropriation by Europeans of the social institutions within Africa. Africans ceased to set indigenous cultural goals and standards and lost full command of training young members of the society. Those were undoubtedly major stepbacks. The Tunisian Albert Memmi puts forward the following proposition, and it reads, the most serious blow suffered by the colonized is being removed from history and from the community. Yep. Colonization usurps any free role in either war or peace, every decision contributing to his destiny and that of the world in all cultural and social responsibility. Trappers. Trappers.
Yeah.
You have anything, comrade?
Well, everything. I had highlighted everything that you just read. And it just, I really like how he kind of talks about power, what that is. Because I know when we say black power, and, that's a term, when we hear power like so often now that sometimes it loses its meaning. But power is the ability to have any type of control over your land and resources. And in the way that he lays it out here, he said to defend one's interest if necessary. And the people of Africa didn't at that point had no ability to do that. And that's what we mean, like when people are like, well, look at the condition of Africa, there is no power right there right now, or at least no power that maybe that they're aware of, which is what we're trying to change. But I mean, this is something that I think is really important, and that we understand that the conditions that exist are not at the fault of the continent itself or indicative of any type of depravity of the people there. It's due to the fact that their power was stripped of them from these invaders, who wanted to set the stage so that everything was in their benefit.
Yes. Black power, y'all. We're going to do another shameless plug real quick. But again, please donate. Today we have $70 more to raise for our
$70 more.
Lyrics and Ladles event. And in today's episode, we're raising the goal was $100, so we could cover the budget for the food that's going to be at the event. So again, you can donate through CashApp. That's the $ Blackhammer ATL.
Yup.
Blackhammer ATL. So contribute whatever you can, whether it's $5, $10, $20, whatever dollars that you have. Please make sure that you donate, or again, put your pledges in the comment section. Just tell us how much you want to donate and the day that you can pledge it, and we're gonna follow up with you just to make sure that we get it. And Black power. Okay, so also another part of this, what he speaks about on, and I want to say like kind of lightly, is like the neo-colonialists, like almost the advent of neo-colonialists right now in this point in history. And he starts off by saying that, at first, again, there was some semblance of political power that was still retained in, some areas within Africa. But then he says, as colonialism was able to deepen its motherfucking fangs into Africa, like all of those political states were completely just like eradicated.
Oh my God.
And he says, finally, those that appeared to survive were nothing but puppet creations. Puppet creations. For instance, the Sultan of Morocco retained nominal existence under colonial rule, which started in 1912, and the same applied to the Bey of Tunis. But Morocco and Tanzania were just as much under the power of French colonial administrators as neighboring Algeria, where the feudal rulers were removed altogether. Sometimes the African rulers who were chosen to serve as agents of foreign colonial rule were quite obviously nothing but puppets.
And who was
nothing but puppets.
Yeah.
The French and the Portuguese were in the habit of choosing their own African chiefs. The British went to Ireland and invented warrant chiefs, and all the colonial powers found it convenient to create superior or paramount rulers. Very often, the local population despised such colonial stooges. They were traditional rulers such as the Sultan of Sokoto, and the Kabaka of Buganda, and the Ashanti Hene of Asante, who retained a great deal of prestige in the eyes of Africans, but they had no power to act outside the narrow boundaries laid by colonialism, lest they found themselves in the Seychelles Islands as guests of His Majesty's government. And you already know what that means, as prisoners. As prisoners. And I mean, like, we even see the relationship of these neo-colonialist stooges that are in, exactly, just like Comrade Tariva said, the same thing that we're dealing with today. As Comrade Robert just said, ain't shit changed, neo-colonial ass puppets. And you know who is the archetype of neo-colonial stooges? The most neo-colonialist puppet that we have seen in history right now. And that is Barack Obama. Can you send me? I want to see this project that Ari made.
Yeah. I think I took a picture of it. Yes, I will. Because, because, Barack Obama, we all know that he was a direct descendant from a continental African. And one of the things that we like to think is like he represents us because he looks like us, right? And, he's got to be for African people. But one of the facts that I made sure to put on there is that he sent over 395 bombs, and he bombed at least three countries in the 5 years that he was in office. And that's not, you're not working in the interest of the African people that way. Not to mention, you don't even acknowledge the plight of what's going on with the people, with the Africans here. So, one of the things too, I will send you that. One of the things too that I wanted to point out too is he goes on to say, one can go as far to say that the colonial rule meant the effective eradication of any type of African political power throughout the continent, since Liberia and Ethiopia could no longer function as independent states. So even sovereign states didn't have a say-so in how they would continue to follow, lay out their own governmental rule within the context of continental-wide colonialism. So basically, once imperialism has spread to basically blanket a land mass, even the ones that want to try to remain independent or remain sovereign and separate, they're going to face all types of hostility towards the surrounding areas, and they're not going to be able to function, and it's going to make it that much harder for them to function as a people. And then that's where you have like civil wars and things to break out.
And another thing that before we, because I know we're coming close to a close, but another important aspect that Comrade Walter Rodney speaks to is what happened to African women in this whole scheme of things.
Yes, he did.
And the way he lays it out is just like,
I mean,
it's so profound and powerful. Like, those are two words, profound and powerful. And he says, a realistic assessment of the role of women in independent pre-colonial Africa shows two contrasting but combined tendencies. In the first place, women were exploited by men through polygamous arrangements designed to capture the labor power of women. As always, exploitation was accompanied by oppression, and there is evidence to the effect that women were sometimes treated like beasts of burden, as for instances in Muslim African societies. Nevertheless, there was a counter tendency to ensure the dignity of women to greater or lesser degree in all African societies. Mother right was a prevalent feature of African societies. In particular, women held a variety of privileges based on the fact that they were the keys to inheritance. More important still, some women had real power in the political sense, exercised either through religion or directly within the political constitutional apparatus. In Mozambique, the widow of a Nguni king became the priestess in charge of the shrine set up in the burial place of her deceased husband, and the reigning king had to consult her on all important matters. In a few instances, women were actually head of state. Among the Lovdu of Transvaal, the key figure was the reigning queen, combining political and religious functions. The most frequently encountered role of importance played by women was that of queen mother or queen sister. In practice, that post was filled by a female of royal blood who might be mother, sister, or aunt of the reigning king in places such as Mali, Asante, and Buganda. Her influence was considerable, and there were occasions when the queen mother was the real power, and the male king was a mere puppet. What happened to African women under colonialism is that the social, religious, and constitutional and political privileges and rights disappeared, while the economic exploitation continued and was often intensified. It was intensified because the division of labor according to sex was frequently disrupted. Traditionally, African men did the heavy labor of felling trees, clearing lands, building houses, apart from conducting warfare and hunting. When they were required to leave their farms to seek employment, women remained behind, burdened with every task necessary for the survival of themselves, the children, and even the men as far as foodstuffs were concerned. Moreover, since men entered the money sector more easily and in greater numbers than women, women's work became greatly inferior to that of men within the new volume system of colonialism. Point. Men's work was modern and women's work was traditional and backwards. Therefore, the deterioration in the status of African women was bound up with the consequent loss of the right to set indigenous standards of what work had merit and what did not. And that is what we even seeing that now.
Yes, of
we
course.
Even seeing that now.
Of course.
Wow.
And it's skewed too, because it's so skewed in the way that we even think about it, because again, this book is a great example of things that we think, okay, well, this is, we had traditional like specific roles for certain genders, and that wasn't necessary. It was nothing like that. As a matter of fact, when we were reading about the Dahomey, their women were parts of their military.
Yes, exactly.
Frontline people in their military. So we know that there were huge differences in the way that women were revered in true, authentic African tradition compared to what we're looking at now, which has been colonialized, skewed, and we've lost touch with that.
Is there anything else you wanted to go over before we close?
I highlighted something around the tribalism part and what that what that talked about. He said one of the most important manifestations of historical arrest and stagnation in colonial Africa is that which commonly goes under the title of tribalism, which is talking about basically, basic groups and how they interacted with one another. And he lays out how, after the colonies were formed, those things were basically preyed upon in the form of colonies. Okay, y'all don't have any. I mean, we're seeing that now, kind of in some things that are happening.
Just like proxy wars, and and just to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's that, and I like how he lays it out because he even uses like the examples between the Congo and Nigeria, and he said their account suggests that Europeans tried to make a nation out of the Congolese and Nigerian peoples, but they failed because of the tribes. The tribes basically they hated each other so much, and they on the colonial regimes only tried to help them, but they wanted to kill each other to the point that they just couldn't do it anymore and they left, and that's what they wanted you to believe. It says to this phenomenon, Europeans often attach the word atavism to carry the notion that Africans were returning to their primitive savagery. Even a cursory survey of the African past shows that such assertions are the exact opposite. So if anything, they just use those types of relationships and preyed on that to kind of create more division. So that, what would it look like for a unified Africa for the European or for the colonialists? It would be a scary sight. So,
and that's another, historical fact that we see, that we see playing out right now today, and that comes in the terms of, these proxy wars, like the massacre that happened in Rhodesia, and the Civil War and things of that nature. All of this extends from that. Yes. And when we discussed the Berlin Conference, when these motherfucking colonizers came to this conference, and this is when Africa was introduced to these 54 countries, because before colonialism, before Europeans stepped foot on Africa, you didn't hear anything about some goddamn country. There were no imposed borders. Nope. And then, this whole thing, how Walter Rodney is summing it up, the reason why Africans who literally went from being in the same space together to now these colonizers placed in this imaginary line, then they pit the two, not even two, but African people who were already living together, but now because they're divided between this
border,
this
imaginary border.
Now they become enemies to each other, and then the colonizers. This is a benefit from them for them, because it's let the niggas kill each other, let the Africans kill each other. We don't have to do it.
Meanwhile, we can go in and dangle some resources in front of them and see which one we can get to align with us, and then we have control over that area. And then something else that he talked about. He talks about like the Civil War. They will the colonial apologists will try to write or assert that the Civil War in Nigeria is generally regarded as being a tribal affair, but it really was about oil, and so that's not even the direct or the correct definition of what a tribe even is. It again, just like you said, these borders were created. Those were states, those were countries. And then when you're talking about tribes, and not to say that those tribes didn't have disagreements, but it didn't raise to the level of wars that we're seeing that happen between places like Nigeria, what we've come to know as Nigeria, and things of that sort, where they're fighting over resources because they're forced into the money economy. They're forced to participate in that. That's not a tribal war.
And there's a sister that we know, Diamond. Yeah. And she's from the continent. And her family was in the continent around the time, the Civil War that broke out in Rhodesia. And she told me that they had colonizers who would set up gun stands in town and give guns away to Africans to shoot and kill each other.
Yeah. See?
This is what we're talking about. And even now, like today, like when we made that post about the new chapter that we're starting in Nigeria, this whole tribalism thing, like this whole internal, like, this whole internal struggle, it even played out in the in the comment sections, because we had some of our brothers and sisters saying that we're Biafra and all of these different types of these titles that have been forced upon us, and we had to go into these comments to say to our brothers and sisters, no brother, no sister, we are all one African people. We are. So this same fight that we're talking about, that's being talked about in this book right now, is the same fight that we're fighting against right now, that we are currently fighting against right now.
Yeah. It was just so much in this chapter, and then just something else that stood out to me that I know we didn't have a chance to go into. Just even the fact that so much, a lot of cotton was exported to Europe and everything, but even like the production of even if they wanted to get their own cotton gin, the trade regulations made it illegal for that to even happen. They were illegal to even watch how it was being manufactured into produce cotton. And so I know I'm jumping around, but it's just like all of everything that we see, every single problem that Africans have today, wherever they are, is the fault of the colonizer. We can literally tag it on the colonizer. Everything. You can't work, it's the colonizer's fault. You can't provide for your family, it's the colonizer's fault. Every single thing is their fault because they force us into this situation. And this book further supports that assertion. And it's not just coming from the fact that, I'm not even saying that I do, but the fact that we just hate white people. Your literal history is tied to the fact that all you've ever done is steal, thieve, kill people, spread diseases, lie. You're still doing it. It's still like evident. You still do it. And then you turn around and sit and be like, see, this is your own fault. And you want us to believe it. And I really appreciate this book. I our children's curriculum so that they can grow up and know the truth and not buy into the lie that they're living in the best country in the world, being in a settler state, the U.S. of America. But I'm talking about Africans all over the world. We're not just talking about us here in the U.S. We are saying this needs to be in the curriculum of every African child. Every African child should know the truth, because like you just mentioned, the fact that we're seeing it play out even now, the what we would call a tribal war now, they need the education.
Yes.
Those children need the education. And our continental siblings need that education to understand we are one African nation. All over, wherever we exist, we are one African nation. And we love all of you.
Period. And that's coming from an African mother warrior right here, okay? All right, comrades. So, so now next week, we're finishing. Yeah. So we're going to be reading from Education for Underdevelopment, all the way up into the postscript. So please make sure you do your reading assignment. Come back with your hashtag read that back so we can have a fruitful discussion. Also, please, again, make sure you donate to the Black Hammer ATL unit Cash App for our Lyrics and Ladles open mic series. Our Lyrics and Ladles open mic series that's coming up in April. That's April 11th at 7 p.m. It's going to be hosted at the Black Dot Culture Center. Comrade Robert has been working. I can't remember if it was Comrade Robert, but somebody, one of the comrades on the Agitprop team has created this this awesome propaganda piece that we're going to start sharing now. So please just donate what you can. Black Hammer ATL, and we're gonna make sure that this event is just litty.
So when are we gonna release the next book? Because Rye is asking if we're gonna tell them what the next book is next Sunday.
We will let y'all know next Sunday what's the next book for that we're going to be going on. And as y'all know, we always provide the PDF, and just we found the audio book for this book, so we'll be looking for that as well. So if you just coming on to the Revolutionary Book Trap, now is the time for you to really, we getting ready to start a new book, and like these books, it's just like a journey. Like it's just like a wonderful journey. So make sure you tune in next week so you can find out our new book. And yeah, we got to raise this money for this Lyrics and Ladles event, y'all. Thank you to everybody who has donated thus far. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. And I know it sounds redundant, but I mean, it has to be said, and it's going to continue to be said, because without the people, without your support, there would be no Black Hammer. There would be no Black Hammer Atlanta unit to even exist in the first place.
Exactly.
So yes, we appreciate you all, and we thank you all. So remember, we reading from Education for Underdevelopment all the way to the postscript, which is pretty much the end of the book, comrades. So y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Sunday, and we will see y'all Tuesday for our public meeting, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is going to be hosted right here on the Black Hammer Facebook page. Black Power, y'all.
Black Power.